From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Good afternoon. Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gleason. Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tuesday, February 6, 2018 meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors, the PM session. Mr. Nations, would you give us a report on actions taken during closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board did meet in closed session following this morning's public session on item 29 to give directions to its designated representative for purposes of labor negotiations. It then met in closed session under item 30 to do performance evaluations for the Veteran Services Officer, Director of Aging Adult Services, and the County Administrative Officer, all of which were completed. No other reportable actions were taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nations. We are next going to deal with our consent agenda this afternoon. Consent items are indicated on your agenda with a CA above the item number and are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion if a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask a question regarding an item or items that are on consent. They may do so prior to the vote being taken on the consent agenda. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda that he or she wishes to be considered separately, and it will be then heard in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to then speak to that pulled item before action is taken. So let's proceed through our agenda, and I'll highlight to you which are those items that are on consent. On page number 2 of the afternoon agenda, item number 3. On page 3, all the items 4 through 9 with the exception of item 10. On page 4, all the items 11 through 15. On page 5, the items 16 through 22. Are there any members of the public that would like to make comment to us about any matter on the consent calendar today? I see no one indicating as such. Are there members of the board that would like to pull an item, or is there a motion to proceed with the approval of the consent agenda?
Motion on consent.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll next hear public presentations. We always offer an opportunity for the public to speak to us about any matter that is not otherwise on our agenda for today, and we offer 2 minutes to each speaker to be able to bring something to our attention. Is there anybody who would like to speak this afternoon? Mr. Scott, please come forward, and please give us your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Ray Scott, Price Disposal. Sir, Council, Supervisors, reason I came to you today was to talk about the Career Expo Kern High School District is doing for all students throughout Kern County. And really what this is a career path for students. So this way they can talk to actual employers and know what they need to achieve to gain employment in that industry. And so right now, I mean, it's already 2 weeks away and we have over 100 employers that will be at the Rabobank Arena. Because why? Because of our students. Just as whether it be management of employees, volunteers, students, educate, engage, and encourage. And that's what the purpose and the focus of this event for our students is. It will be February 22nd at the Rabobank Theater here in Bakersfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, for bringing that to our attention.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Scott?
Oh, yes, sir.
Mr.
Mr. Scott, hold on just a second. Supervisor
That's me
Gleason.
talking.
Yes, sir.
Impressive. Thank you very much. What have we done enough? Have we done reach out to the outer skirts of Kern County, the Delano, the McFarlands,
Yes,
the
sir.
Shafter, Ridgecrest, all the eastern Kern?
Yes, sir. They've also made arrangements with school districts to actually bus students in.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Would any other members of the public like to make comment to us this afternoon about any item not otherwise on our agenda? Okay, we'll close public presentations then and move on to the board. Any board members have an announcement or a report they'd like to make? Don't see anyone. So let's move on then to item number 10, which is on page 3 of our agenda, if you're following along. It is a proposed agreement for lease with Assurance Development LLC, and I believe Mr. Alsop and Mr. Hill are going to initiate the discussion on this matter. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This item was, as you recall, continued from your Tuesday, January 23rd meeting at the request of the CAO, at my request. We're here today. The item before you today is a proposed agreement for lease with Assurance Development LLC, Lantz Family LP, Wible Investors LLC for a property located at 3701 North Sillect Avenue in the city of Bakersfield for use by the Department of Child Support Services as office space. The proposed lease of this office space would require a move of our Department of Child Support Services from their current location at 1300 18th Street. At this time, the recommendation from your Child Support Services Director is to approve the item before you and move CSS to the new location at 3701 North Sillect Avenue. I concur with that recommendation, and I know that our Property Management Division concurs with that recommendation as well. Current property owners at 1300 18th Street were notified that CSS was intending to move locations in December of 2016, nearly 2 years before their current 20-year lease at that particular location was to be up. Early last year, after examining multiple potential sites, CSS identified one that met its needs in both price and configuration, that property being 3701 North Sillect. The county began working with the owners of that property on a potential move. The owners at the 18th Street location, the current location of CSS, provided the county with a proposal essentially matching the price with what was to be paid at North Sillect on December 8th, just a couple of months ago. And we thank them for that. That proposal also included cost savings to the county's crime lab, operated by the DA, which is located on the 4th floor of that particular building. Additionally, they offered to reconstruct large portions of the office space occupied by the Child Support Services Department in an effort to provide the operational environment that they need due to newly enacted federal regulations. And they offered to do so at their cost, which was also a very nice thing to do. To date, plans for reconfiguration of the current office location at 1300 18th fail to adequately address the needs of your CSS director. The needs that she has stated for her reasons to move, and reasons that operational improvements that she must have in order to operate efficiently and most importantly in compliance with new federal regulations. So again, I'm happy to discuss and go into cost. I have Jeff Hill with me, who oversees our general services and property management. And your Child Support Services Director, Liz Chavez, is here to answer any questions that you might have regarding these federal regulations, which she obviously is an expert on, being your director. So just again, we're suggesting that you approve this move. We get it going. We also I would suggest that we begin renegotiating a short-term lease for the crime lab at its current location of 1300 18th Street with the current owners. I would focus those negotiations on two priorities. One, ensuring the long-term success of the crime lab in Kern County, and two, coming up with some agreement that saves taxpayers money. We would get involved with that right away. And I would concurrently put out there that I would direct staff Concurrent with those negotiations, direct staff and property management to begin working with the sheriff's office and the district attorney's office to begin contemplating a plan for co-locating the crime lab with the coroner's office in a new state-of-the-art facility, whether that's new construction or whether that is an existing building that's retrofitted to do so. The need for our coroner to have new facilities is acute, and they don't have a lot of time. They are in dire need of a new space, as are other county departments. And I believe looking at this and actually doing something where we co-locate those two facilities, the debt service payments on that facility wouldn't be that much more than we're paying in our current lease just for the crime lab. Under its current agreement. So that is my report to you today. Ms. Chavez is here to answer any questions that you might have on regulations. Again, we're happy to talk about some of the numbers that we have, and with that, I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Hill, do you wish to make comment before we go to Ms. Chavez? Okay. Ms. Chavez, good afternoon. Why don't you tell us why you are recommending that we proceed with this move?
Good afternoon, Chairman Maggard and board members. The reason I'm recommending this change and this move is because 20 years ago, when the department was separated from the district attorney's office, we were required to start to do things a little bit differently. At the time, we didn't have the information that we now receive regarding our case participants. It was a manual process. Now we have a case management system. With this case management system, we receive information from the IRS regarding our case participants. And because of that, we now have new regulations that require we safeguard all the information. Based on those regulations, their security principles are the need to know and the least privilege. And in the need to know, it's really securing the information for those that need to know the information and coming in contact with that. We have safeguards that require us to safeguard the system and also the property, the physical actual documents that we receive, the actual building we work in, which includes our work areas, our lobbies, the perimeter of the building. So there's a lot more now than we had 20 years ago when the building was built for child support services in the crime lab. The property owners have provided to us a plan. And from the very beginning, I asked for a plan that was 2 stories so that we were not only in compliance with our regulations, but also in line with Lean Six Sigma. We took the current processes that we have organizationally and how we're serving our customers to come up with a process that was in line with Lean Six Sigma. That would be 2 floors, which would allow us to secure the area, which would allow us to separate our case management from our customer service area, and also to safeguard our servers, because currently our servers are in an area that is not just for child support services. So part of our safeguarding of our servers also requires them to be in a cage that's locked behind locked doors, behind another locked door. So there's a lot of security issues that we have to address. Having a new building with just 2 floors that allows child support to be the only tenant there will allow us an opportunity to better manage the security of our area and the security of our customers' information. I think that 20 years ago, identity theft wasn't at the way it is now. There's a lot of cyber theft. And so the IRS has come out with very clear guidelines for us. And in this last year, we have created 13 new policies just for our staff to be able to understand the severity of not safeguarding that information. What happens? Because they can actually go to jail for 5 years or receive a $5,000 fine. So there's a lot of security now that's required from our department. And just keeping the Lean Six Sigma in mind, because that's one of the county's goals, is to be more efficient, provide good customer service. Our recommendation is that we move forward with this proposal.
Thank you. Ms. Chavez, any questions for her before we go to the next level of discussion?
Just one. I wanted to catch what you said. You said that on the 2 floors, you want to separate case management and what other?
And my customer service area.
Customer-
Right
that's
now,
what I thought.
customer service is on the second floor, so it requires my customers to check in on the first floor, go in the elevator, go to the second floor, check in again. I also have a third floor that requires a receptionist that's just watching the elevator because that elevator goes up and down all of the floors. So in order for us to safeguard the information, we have to have escorts for anyone that's going above the second floor. That's part of the reasons why I'm asking for 2 floors, because I can safeguard my case management information on the second floor and keep the customers on the first floor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Chavez or Mr. Hill or Mr. Alsop before we go to the public? Okay, let's hear first from those who are in favor of this proposal. Are there any speakers here today who would like to speak in favor of the proposal that we have before us? And Mr. Hoag, we know who you are, but would you please tell the public who you are for the record?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Tony Hoag, and I'm representing the landlord group for the building on Sillect Avenue. We want to thank each supervisor for taking the time to meet with us on multiple occasions to discuss this matter. We appreciate your time very much. We also want to commend staff for the job they have done throughout this entire process. They are a devoted, hardworking group of people. We agree with staff's recommendation and would appreciate your vote for approval today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoag. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor? Please proceed. Give us your name for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael Frey, and I'm here representing the Tracy Ranch, Inc. and the Tracy family, who are the current owners of the building. We thank you for your consideration of our building for the new home for child support services, and we support staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak in favor of the recommendation? Okay, are there any people here this afternoon that would like to speak in opposition to the recommendation? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Supervisors, Mr. Chairman. My name is Steve Anderson. I represent, the Anderson Family Trust, and I'm speaking on behalf of our partner today as well, Brent Lee, who represents the Lee Development family. You know, this, I'd like to hand out, is it possible to give a handout to the board?
Yes, sir, it is.
But what about overheads? Can I do that?
Could somebody run an overhead for him?
And then the overhead is here. Thank you. I apologize for that
No
delay.
problem. Let's give him just a second, Mr. Anderson, to make sure
Sure.
they're ready to show your overhead. Tell us when you think the overhead is ready to go. There we go.
We need to pan out far enough to where we can see the labeled areas. You have Sillect Avenue in the upper left-hand corner. Then you have the Get Transit Center on Chester, 1300 18th Street,
Just a
which
little
is
bit
a
more.
project that where the group is presently located. Then just below that, can you pan out further? A little more. We're showing proximity of the downtown location to the county courthouse and also to the county administration building. Okay, I think everybody's probably pretty familiar with this. I'd like to turn your attention to an outline, actually in the form of a letter that we put together dated February the 6th. And it's kind of a summary of issues that we have discussed various times with board members and also with Elizabeth Chavez, and also with General Services. Are we okay to continue?
Yes, you are.
So this whole issue that we have in front of us, it's not about one group against another group. We have done business over the years with Mark Smith and many groups that he's represented. We have greatest respect for Mark. Bill Tracy taught my dad how to ride a horse, to show you how far back we go with the Tracy family. This is not us trying to oppose them. This is a discussion regarding the right thing to do for the county with regards to the dollars that are involved, and also a brief discussion on just the logistics of where our building is and where the building is located on Sillect. General Services has done a good job. I think General Services has always, in the times that we've dealt with them over the years, been very thorough in vetting buildings to determine which buildings would qualify for a proposal that the county would consider for a lease. And in addition to Sillect, the 1318th Street site was also vetted and selected by General Services. I think that the timing is an item that we have heard discussed, and I was a little bit surprised to hear Mr. Alsop mention that we were notified as early as December of 2016 to respond to the fact that the county was intending to move from the building. I assure you that's the first time that I've heard that remark. We may have documentation that we haven't seen, but it's simply not the case. We don't think that that's the case. We feel very responsive to every issue that the county has had, or every comment that they've had with regards to continuance of the lease. So Jeff Hill's group, and with Katie Watkins and also with Tim Garrison, worked very diligently in making requests of us for proposals for them to consider alongside the proposal that was being considered for Sillect. We have not missed a single deadline that was given to us, not a single deadline that was given to us with regards to turning in a comparable proposal, a proposal that could be compared to the other group. If you're hearing otherwise, it just simply is erroneous. Greg Bynum and his group have managed this building for 20 years. And Greg Bynum's group has done what I would consider a very good job of building management. There have been issues from time to time. In a 20-year span, you're going to have issues that need to be addressed in a building. As the building matures, you have maintenance items that have to be addressed. We have addressed all of those items, and we think in a timely fashion. There was a gross error on our part with regards to a much discussed toilet that went unrepaired for a year. And when we were made aware of that, Elizabeth Chavez made us aware of that in a meeting, made Greg and I aware of that in a meeting, and we were appalled that that could possibly have happened. We went back to the gentleman that was handling the building management, and he said he was working with, not Elizabeth, but her predecessor, in picking a time when the building could be shut down as far as the water was concerned, so this one toilet, not a toilet that was being utilized in the overall count, but this one toilet should have been available, and it was not. We have no excuse for that. We simply have no excuse for that. Had we have known about it, we would have taken care of it certainly much sooner. The minute it was found out, we took care of that. There were other items that were on the list that Ms. Chavez provided to us, and we took care of those. We have never spared a dime in the expense of maintaining this building. Sherman Lee always had said that this building must be taken care of. It's at my front door. It's my next door neighbor. Make the county happy. And that has always been the Anderson family's intentions as well. If we talk a little bit, or if we can talk just briefly about the fact that we were not engaged in terms of a contract for services to be paid for, but we were involved with the county, particularly with Ms. Chavez's staff and with General Services staff, to come up with a plan that would allow for consolidation of 3 floors of personnel in about 72,000 square feet, sparsely dispersed in 72,000 square feet. And when we were made aware of the fact that their desire was to consolidate to 52,000 feet was the number that we came up with. I think the other side is 58,000 feet. We immediately brought on the services of Mark Russell, Radiant Design, and he worked with Elizabeth. She spent countless hours. Brett spent countless hours as well trying to work out the reorder, if you will, of all the personnel to pull them off the 3rd floor in their entirety and come down to the 2nd and the 1st floor. We accomplished that. We had instructions from Ms. Chavez as we would turn a drawing in and she would find something that didn't quite fit her need. Go back, see if you can make this work. In all cases, we went back and we made it work. The final fit of the building is something that would occur if we had the lease going forward and if there are any rough edges to our design, and I don't honestly feel that there are, then they could be determined or resolved at that point in time. There was a need to separate I'm sorry, you said customer service and case management, I believe, to separate those 2 services. They are totally separated in the proposal that we came up with. The only thing that we could not fit on the 2 floors that we're proposing to lease to the county going forward was a 200-person training room, And we asked, is it important to have adjacency? It's convenient to have adjacency. So we tried everything we could, adjacency with other services within her department. We tried everything we could to fit it on the 1st floor. We even moved the DA special services to an area, proposed to move to an area adjacent to the crime lab that is presently unused by the crime lab, which would help them consolidate space. It would make more room for the requested 200-person training room. We just simply could not do that. But what we did do, and we kept it within 52,000 square feet, is we moved that training room that Ms. Chavez said not only would be used for training of county personnel, but also would be used for people at large within the county, if you will, private use. We moved it to the 3rd floor. And if you have familiarity with the building at all, you will remember that the 3rd floor parking structure has a bridge that goes over to the 3rd floor of the building. And as you enter the building, you enter a lobby. The 200-person training room has been located adjacent to that lobby. We felt that that was a viable solution because people that go for training typically get up, leave their desk, go to another building across town, upstairs, or wherever they may go. But it's not imperative that they necessarily be right next to their work area. This pardon me, was an important fact if you consider the public's going to use that area. And if the public's going to use that area, I would think the last thing you would want to do is have people of the public going through the building occupied by Family Support Services into a training room / public arena. We want to keep the people separate. We want to keep the clients separate, if you will, other than when it's absolutely necessary to deal with the folks of family support. That was made very clear to us right from the beginning by Ms. Chavez. So putting the building that's going to house the training facility on the 3rd floor, we thought this is a great solution. And again, I emphasize it's all within the 52,000 square foot that we are proposing to lease to the county. Greg Bynum will be up in just a moment. He will discuss the economics. I will just steal a little of his thunder by saying that I'm shocked to hear that we matched. I believe, Mr. Alsop, those were your words, that we matched the deal of the other group. When we turned our proposal in to Katie Watkins on the date that she requested, we had not seen the deal from the other group. We were not made aware of what their numbers were or what was included or not included until I believe the 19th of December, when that item was on a consent agenda that we knew nothing about, until someone called and said, you need to look at this. We were then able to gain access to their information via public information that was presented to the board. That was the first time we ever saw any of their numbers. Our numbers were already in. Our numbers are considerably lower than their numbers. I really don't know how you can make a true evaluation of the two proposals and come up with they're even. I think Mr. Alsop was correct in indicating that some of the services that we were offering were in fact to be done for free, not at our cost and cost to the county, but in fact for free. All the tenant improvement requirements that would be necessary to move Ms. Chavez Group down and consolidate the first and second floor, we are paying for those. The tearing down of existing workstations, the moving of those existing workstations to their new location on the first and second floor, we are paying for that. The IT reconfiguration, we've consulted with IT experts, and they have told us that what the cost would be within our building. We think it is a minimal cost because essentially it's a matter of running or relocating existing wires, assuming that they're not changing their entire system. If they're changing their entire system, then that's something we're not aware of. I'd like to mention just for a moment the issue of separation of the IT. Am I okay on time, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, you are. There's no time limit for
All right, thank you,
this
sir.
kind of a hearing.
Thank you.
Well, there's tomorrow. We
Well,
need to
there
do
is
it by
tomorrow, and I do have a horse lesson later, so I need to get on with this.
For Mr. Tracy?
Mr. Tracy, yes. We are, I just really got off track there.
Yeah.
Let me gather my thoughts for just a moment. I was talking about the cost of the move to the county. I think that the folks that are representing Select Court told us that their move cost would be, or it's been made aware to us, their move cost would be about $140,000. We think that's probably pretty close. A county expense. We think it's closer to $150,000, but that's minor. That has to be added to whatever deal evaluation you're looking at. We've talked with IT folks and have found that we're looking at another $150,000 number, but about $150,000 for moving IT to this new location. We're also looking at numbers for security that are in excess of $100,000. That's where every door has to be rearmed, reprogrammed, set up for use with the county access cards that Ms. Chavez's department will utilize. What I was going to mention earlier was there was a concern for the combining of IT services, the district attorney's crime lab group, and with the group for family support services. It's true, they're in the same room. What we proposed to Ms. Chavez to meet the needs of the newly known needs of security was to provide a physical separation wall between the two services. What we didn't think made sense was to completely move IT, which is an isolated service, down into the second floor area. So it would be right where they are. You would step over here, put in a wall, have the district attorney on one side, separate access door, and have family support on the other side of that elongated room, if you will. And that would have separate access. Separate air conditioning systems could be required or could be furnished as required. So we think that issue might not be a valid issue. We think that there was another issue that came up, that the exterior security of the building was now having to adhere to federal government IRS standards. We just turned a proposal in last week for an IRS move into a building that we're involved with. And the exterior standard requirement was a bollard requirement. That was the extent of it. We have bollards installed at this building in the back of the building. I don't believe there's bollards in the front of the building. bollards can be installed. We've never been requested to install bollards. And if the county would have known about that issue, they would have told us a long time ago, I'm sure. So this is something new. Tell us what the new rules are and we'll comply. We have never said no to the county. And I'm wrapping up here, Mr. Chairman. The architectural services were discussed at the last meeting, and I believe the other side may have been in error. I don't know what their deal was with their professionals, but when you hire an architectural team to come in and do conceptual planning in the interior of a building, you pay them for that service that they are providing, typically on an hourly basis, which we have done. And we have now exceeded $50,000. And we have been doing that with the cooperation of all the county agencies that you've assigned to make a good decision regarding this move. So we didn't just do it in the dark and come in and present it to you today and say this will work. It's had extensive input from county. The comment was made, I believe, that services have to be paid for that haven't been rendered. The architectural services that might have to be done as a result of receiving a new contract, and mechanical and electrical and all of those things that go along with it. If you don't perform a service, you don't get paid, plain and simple. And everybody that provided service to us has been paid, and they don't expect anything beyond that other than they would like our loyalty if the project did go forward in its present location. So I just wanted to make that one clarification. We had an opportunity, Brent Lee, being much younger and much more adept with the use of the internet and computers, got online, and he was bothered by the logistics of this project and what it provides for not only county workers, but the city of Bakersfield. And you may say, well, he has a vested interest. They own Billy's Bamboo Chopsticks. Yes, they do. And they've been there for in excess of 75 years. But when you look at the map that's in front of you, and I believe you have monitors that show this, and you look at the location of 1300 18th Street, that's where our building is. That building was placed there, approved by the county, selected by the county for the logistics that it provided to the county at large. The city hasn't moved. The city hasn't moved in the sense of that location is still central downtown Bakersfield. Services to other groups may have increased. Delano chapter, I believe, Ms. Chavez, we had that discussion, but services that might be provided to Arvin and Lamont and to the Kern River Valley and other areas that the county serves, that hasn't changed. The further west you go with your building, the further away from the eastern folks you become. And you can do the math on that. An interesting fact that was presented by Mr. Lee. He got on a service called LoopNet Business Properties. Never heard of it in my life, but now I'm aware of it. And they have what they call a walkability rating for buildings. And that walkability rating is how you determine services that are available in the proximity of your building where you're presently located. This building, out of a score of 1 to 100, this building at 1300 18th Street received a 76. The building on Sillect received a 32. Nothing wrong with the building, it's just sparsely populated with support services around the building. So folks that will adjourn from their job and go have lunch or whatever, and the clients that come to that are looking for support services that are very, very important, will not readily find those services, certainly not as readily as they find them in downtown Bakersfield. The other area that we looked at was Get Bus Transit. If you look at our map again, if you'll indulge me, you'll see that the transit center is 2 blocks away from the parking structure at 1300 18th Street. And that is a hub for Get. And they tell us that from that hub, you can go to or come from anywhere in Bakersfield because it's just as it explains, it's a hub. The services on Sillect Avenue, they have bus service, and I'm sure the group will provide additional bus stops if necessary. But the logistics of getting to that site are made much more difficult than they are to come to the hub downtown. There are just more buses, if you follow me, that will congregate back to their home ground. The parking structure itself, for those folks that want to drive, is a parking structure that is controlled 100% by the County of Kern. There are spaces in that parking structure that are leased to other folks outside the county, other businesses. We don't control that. The County of Kern controls that. I believe that that's still the case. That has been, I know, for a long time. So you mixing your folks with folks from other businesses, that's your decision. The security itself, one of the things that Ms. Chavez was concerned about, and I share her concern, is, well, it's not really secure because we don't have gates and we don't have a kiosk and we don't have a person allowing key or card access of some sort in and out. When we built the parking structure, we had a long discussion with Steve Towser, and at the time Ed Jagels, with regards to how we were going to secure that parking structure. And they said, we're not going to pay the extra money to install a kiosk, and we're certainly not going to have personnel standing there taking tickets. So let's give it a try and see if, in fact, it presents a problem for us. And we said, okay, you're the boss. We would suggest that we at least rough in the electrical services that would be required should you later decide to install a kiosk. Good idea. Steve Towser, what's it going to cost? That was always his question. We worked out a figure. We installed all the underground service. It's still there. The kiosk just hasn't been installed. We assume because the county has determined that security of the parking structure is adequately handled, or for whatever reason they haven't installed that. This building was originally built per county standards, built from an RFP that we responded to with very stringent requirements for the building with regards to, as I mentioned, parking, the type of Class A building that they were requiring. A lot of attention was paid to the HVAC system and to the electrical system. It was decided by the county, and we installed it per their instructions with plans that we created, submitted, and were approved by the county to have the services that you presently see there. There's great concern on the part of Family Support Services, and again, I certainly understand why, because they feel they're paying a disproportionate share. If you take the total bill and divide it by four floors, they're paying a disproportionate share of utility costs. They heretofore have not had a way to really determine what their use is versus other tenants, predominantly the tenant on the fourth floor, which is the district attorney's office. We have offered to separately meter every floor, which will allow for, we've had electricians, electrical engineers come down. They said, yes, it can be done. It's going to take some work. It's going to spend some money, but yes, it can be done. We're willing to do that, to allow for separate metering. So there'll be no question of consumption of electricity for anyone that ultimately occupies that building. You know, I would just, this truly is the last thing I'm going to say. Most of you, and I just feel compelled to say this, most of you know Sherman, and you know the Lee family. And losing Sherman was very tough. For me and for Greg, we're lifelong friends with Sherman. So honoring what he has always wanted for this building. And when I asked Brent what it was that was important to his father, he said, honorably serving the county of Kern. And we have never deterred from that. We are making Sherman proud the entire time that he's on this earth and walking out every day and pointing to that building, his building, even though he has a partner. Lee Development, even though he has a partner, there was a great amount of pride that went into the construction and the management of that building. And if he were here today, he would simply ask you to allow us to continue to be dedicated to the county needs and give us an opportunity to even better serve your needs. Thank you very much. And I appreciate your indulgence.
You're welcome, Mr. Anderson. Thank you for your testimony. We're going to, somebody else I think it looks like wants to speak in opposition. We'll give an opportunity in a moment for those that will spoke in favor to rebut. Okay, so you'll have an opportunity to do that, and then we'll let the other side rebut as well. So does somebody else want to speak on the side of in opposition to the recommendation? Good afternoon. Could you give us your name for the record, please?
Chairman Maggard, members of the board, administrative support personnel, my name is Greg Bynum. As you already know, I do represent the Lee Development Company and both the Anderson Trust and the Sherman Lee family. I just want to address a few things. One thing I would like to say right up front to Ryan is that I've had a great relationship with General Services and Property Management, and we've always worked well together. And I just want to make the point that I was never personally told that you were going to leave the building, and I think that's what you said earlier. The first time I ever really have recollection and documentation for having discussed the renewal of this lease was in April of 2017. And although I would admit to the fact that our property manager was told by the previous director that they were absolutely going to leave the building, he followed it quickly by saying, unless you can get the economics to a point where they're acceptable, and then we'll stay. That's what he said. So I don't recall anything with respect to anybody ever telling us that they were going to leave the building with any official capacity. And certainly, why would property management pursue the proposals from us if that were the case? We started responding with proposals late September, early October, and essentially followed and delivered those proposals as we could and on time. So just want to make that clarification. I think Steve talked about some other things that were involved, but I just wanted you to know that. As I previously testified, the lease renewal that we have offered for support services, in our view and based upon the spreadsheet we've provided, would show a savings in excess of $3 million over the competing proposal. I don't really think, we can all have different views of what costs are, but if you're looking at the two lease proposals, it's pretty apparent that there's a significant difference. But this would be in a completely revitalized space, paying close attention to what Elizabeth Chavez has asked us for. Now, I would be the first to admit sometimes you can't get 100% of everything that you hope to get, and I think in this case we didn't deliver 100%, but we were darn close to it. And I think our attitude is to do everything that we can for Elizabeth to make the space everything she needs for the future. So, in any event, what I didn't mention in my last discussion is that we had offered the additional savings to the county when paired with the renewal of the county crime lab. And since Ryan brought that up, I think it would be incumbent upon me to tell you that when you combine the savings from the two proposals, it's over $6 million over a 10-year period. And all of this without costing one county job. These savings, which are outlined in a spreadsheet, was hand-delivered to all of your offices last week, along with General Services. So I understand that all the people involved in this request to solve the long-term space needs of support services are consummate professionals. Good people just trying to accomplish the job and/or compete for the business. I certainly have no issue with that. We are grateful to be a part of the process. Sometimes in these circumstances, things don't always go as smoothly as you would wish. In our case, leading up to this proposal, as Steve pointed out, we lost a partner of the development, Sherman Lee, to an untimely end. Even though there were some obstacles, we tried and did in fact make all the deadlines requested of us. Our numbers and our proposals were delivered on time. So with that, I want to thank in advance the board and all of you who met with us, including General Services and property management. I think that everybody has been diligent, in their attempt to evaluate the proposals. I understand the significant work that has gone into this and everybody trying to find the right solutions. I appreciate everyone's hard work. I believe in our system. I believe in this process, and I believe in the integrity of everybody in this room, including our competitors and everyone sitting on the dais. Elizabeth, I want to publicly apologize to you if we haven't met your expectations as property managers during the time in which you've been director. I assure you, no matter what happens here, you will have an open line to Steve and I to make sure you're taken care of in the future. All I ask and all my request is that I have your assurance that you fully evaluated the compelling taxpayer savings that the Lee Development proposal offers the County of Kern. With that assurance, regardless of your decision, Lee Development, S.C. Anderson, Bynum and Associates will accept the wisdom of this board, and we will look forward to working together in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Bynum. Is anybody else wanting to speak in opposition to the recommendation from staff? Okay, then I'm going to shift for a moment. Does anybody want to say anything before I ask for a rebuttal opportunity? So I'm going to offer an opportunity for both sides to rebut, to say something else. So I don't know, Mr. Hope, Mr. Frey, Mr. Hogue, rather, Mr. Frey, whoever else you think would like to. Mr. Smith looks like he's coming forward.
Yeah, we have Mr. Smith.
Okay. Try to sum it up a little quicker than all the others have.
I'll be very quick. Mark Smith, I'm a partner in Newmark, Grabbe, Shun Associates, and represent the interest of Tracy Ranch, the owner of the building. I would also echo the same comments that both Greg and Steve have shared. We're friends, competitors, and enjoy the shared experience we have here in Bakersfield. I do want to, however, point out a couple items that have been introduced. First, in terms of the location of the Sillect Avenue property. 20-some years ago, the county made a decision to move a requirement that was currently housed on Truxton Avenue through this RFP process, to the new building located at 1300 18th Street. The county has met every of its obligations in honor of that 20-year commitment. Requirements have changed, both appears clear to us now, both for child support services as well as the crime lab. The effort to introduce an alternative that provides the security, freestanding environment that the program is actually looking for has been introduced. The building square footage of 58,400 feet is actually created through an expansion of the existing footprint of the building. So technically, the building is 51,544 square feet, being expanded to 58,400. So that was a result of the space planning effort that provided the program both their immediate needs plus growth that would be accommodate for staffing needs going forward. The location is served by the Golden Empire Transit, one of the routes. The area in the immediate area is home not only to the Kern Regional Center, to the Bakersfield Heart Hospital campus, and to a soon-to-be-built building for Kern Health Systems, all of which are looking at the location, recognizing central Bakersfield, east of Highway 99, in close proximity to access to Highway 99, serving all of the residents of Kern County, not just downtown. So with those few comments, I just want to at least go on record that we do believe from a location perspective, the property does warrant and deserve the recommendation of staff going forward for child support services at 3701 North Select. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Somebody else came forward. No other comments? Okay. So does that conclude the rebuttal that you guys want to make on your side? Okay, thank you. Would anybody from the group that was, I guess you'd call it the Anderson Trust Lee Development side, do they want to make any kind of rebuttal? Trying to be as fair as we can here.
I can understand why you would say that.
Yeah.
Steve Anderson, I just had one item that I'm not sure that we emphasized. We talked about the loss of business to downtown. I believe if we counted the workstations correctly and the number of people that would be in Ms. Chavez's department, there were 268. I could be off by a little bit on that.
That's workstations, but we only have 179 staff members.
Okay, so 179 staff members. You have room to expand another 100 staff members based on the layouts that we gave to you.
In the next 10 years,
Yes,
maybe?
of course, of course. And with the savings that you'll appreciate are coming from the reduced rent, you should be able to do that even quicker. But if the service rate were 1-to-1, a ratio of folks working for the county and clients that were coming in that building on a daily basis, if my math is correct, you've got 350 people per day that would no longer be downtown, no longer using the services of local businesses downtown. And we think that is a factor that certainly should be considered. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is that it for that side, rebut? Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing and come back to the board for comment and questions. Supervisor Perez has punched in. Would you like to go first?
I would. Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief. There is a lot of back and forth and he said, she said, and this aspect of what the board does I find to be particularly frustrating because we're not a courtroom and we're not really a fact-finding body. So that is a frustration and natural limitation of what we do and how we function. But I have a long-standing history with this department because of my previous job as a public defender, because of the kind of work I do in the community and have for 2 decades. I have a very good relationship with not just this director, but previous 2 directors who I have spent a lot of time communicating with about their needs, interests, and challenges. And what has been consistent in that story for the last decade are legitimate, serious, and material problems with the existing building. I do not want to get into the details of that today. I don't think that will help us at all. I just want to assert that we have been excited about this move for a long time for a number of reasons. I listed some of them last time. And I do not find a reason compelling enough to prevent that move today. In particular, I really choose not to substitute the judgment or wisdom of the director who has devoted her entire adult life to serving this extremely vulnerable population. I take her opinion to be very serious as an expert and as somebody who is legitimately interested in the long-term public policy implications of this decision. And so as difficult as it is and as uncomfortable as it is for such reputable and successful people in this community, I give significant weight to the recommendation of my director as well as my CAO, who I understand are deeply devoted to doing the right thing here and neither of whom are happy about this and certainly do not want to get in the crosshairs of otherwise very reputable, influential people. But I have to give significant weight to their position. What I have seen and learned over the last decade of close and personal involvement and scrutiny. And so with that said, with all due respect and with all hope that we continue on a positive path, whatever happens today, I would like to make a motion to support staff's recommendation, and I'm very interested in hearing from my colleagues. But those are my thoughts for now.
Thank you, Supervisor Perez. Supervisor Scribner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the current lease expires at the end of the year, right, in December?
Yes.
Is that correct, Ms. Chavez? Okay. All right. So we need to get moving on a decision here, whether we stay or we leave. So I'm just trying to weigh the cost savings with either a renegotiated term at the current location or a move, and balance that with the operational efficacy of your department. So I want to talk to you about that mostly, is operationally where you are currently and how things are going to improve for your department if you move to the new location, and then also talk about how you think things will function in light of the changes to the current space that the group that Mr. Bynum and Mr. Lee and Anderson represent. So the 18th Street versus the Sillect. So at the new location, can you? I guess what's important is comparing the new location at Sillect to the 18th Street location. If the improvements are made that you and the 18th Street group has discussed, as far as going from 3 floors to 2, et cetera. So that's what I want to talk about. Also the parking and the having your computer server. I believe there was some discussion of that. Your computer server being separate from the server that the crime lab uses. So if you could please speak to that.
Okay, Supervisor
Thank you.
Scrivener through the chair. The plan that I originally, when I met with the proposed building of Sillect, I gave them a list of things that we needed. And in that, they came up with a design that fits the criteria I asked for. I also provided that same list to the property owners of 18th Street.
And do you know when you provided that to the 18th Street?
That was in November.
Okay.
I don't have the exact date with me because I didn't bring that paperwork with me, of this 2017. Because as I understand it, Marcus Mitchell, the previous director, provided the request to General Services in May of 2016 that he was looking to move. So based on when I met with them, I provided the list and told them I needed 2 floors, needed to move the server room. The last proposal I received in January is still on 3 floors, with my server room on the 3rd floor and technology services and the training room that they mentioned. The reason we were asking for the training room on the 1st floor is, as I stated at the beginning, we cannot have visitors in the office without escorting them. So having them on the 3rd floor, the multi-purpose room up there, doesn't work for us because we would have to escort anyone visiting the building through the elevator. They wouldn't be able to use the bridge.
Got it.
We'd be out of compliance. So I was asking for it on the 1st floor so that they would have easy access to it. My security guard could check the person in and immediately take them to wherever the multipurpose room was at. The other issue I have is, up until today, I didn't know that they would be able to provide separate metering for each floor. The conversation was they could separate the metering for the 1st and 2nd floor, but the 3rd floor would remain on shared metering because they would be renting out the area to other tenants that I would no longer be occupying. That's an issue for us, in that we're not supposed to share prorate utilities. So that didn't meet my requirement or my what I need to be able to safeguard the information that we have and also provide for our customers. I asked for the server room to be moved to 2nd floor because we'd be able to safeguard it at that point with no access to anyone above the 2nd floor without a key card, which is what we have installed throughout the building for all of the tenants. That was at our expense. So I asked for specific things, and the last plan did not have what I asked for. And although it is 52,000 square feet, the rooms, the meeting rooms don't necessarily fit my tables the way I asked for them to fit. And so it feels like we're being really cramped in. And I suspect that if we were continue to work, I'd still end up with 3 floors, which is also going to cost me more in utilities and is not efficient for us. So a 2 floors floor plan was what we asked for from the very beginning.
Okay, and so years ago, Child Support Services and the district attorney, it was the same department. It was under the DA. Do you remember when that changed?
We separated from the district attorney's office in 2000, and we moved into that building in 1998.
Okay, and so now what you're saying is it doesn't work for you to be in the same building as another department because of the requirements for you as far as safeguarding information and moving people in and out of the building. And so can you speak a little bit to the federal IRS regulations? I mean, has something new come down the pike that now you have to take into serious account?
Sure. Originally, we were a manual case management system, so we manually had files that we worked each and every day There was not the interface that we have now. Today, we have a case management system that actually interfaces information in from the IRS for our case participants. Because we receive that information to establish our orders, to enforce our orders, and also to intercept non-payment of child support, we're required to follow the regulations. The state has given us clear guidelines. We have an ISO manual that tells us these are the things you need to do. We actually have a matrix that we have to follow and answer for the state. And so there's a lot more to it now than there was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we were under the district attorney's office, and we abided by what the regulations were at that time. Today, it's a different program. It's more customer service centered. We still fight with the reputation of the district attorney's office, in that customers are still concerned coming into our office, especially when they get on the elevator to go to the second floor. Sometimes they bring someone with them to leave on the first floor in case they don't come back down the second floor to the first floor from the second floor. So that reputation we have of law and order, and some of the words that we used to use to describe our non-custodial parents, that's no longer our story. So having our own building would allow us to not only safeguard our information, but to try to create that customer service-centered service that we're trying to provide to our case participants, because we know when both parents understand the importance of paying their child support, and we have a stipulation for an agreement to pay, and they make that payment, we will consistently provide child support to that family. One of the maps that was just placed up on the board showed how close we are to the courthouse. That's something that I wanted to address, because we are, the court is actually thinking about moving our family law area to the courthouse. That's by traffic court. So that would no longer be an issue.
I was going to ask you about that. Thank you.
And the second thing is, we really try not to take cases to court. My goal is to keep the customer in my office to achieve a stipulation, and only take those cases to court in which is a contested, they're not agreeing and they don't want to come to an agreement. And it requires a commissioner to review the case to determine which is the right amount of support.
So do you think that logistics in the past, when they were looking to locate child support, when I'm saying the DA's office was looking to locate child support services along with the crime lab, logistics, proximity to the courts would have been a consideration? And you're saying now, with the way that they've separated, and now your courts are looking to possibly be moved to the traffic courts, that's no longer an important consideration for you?
Correct.
Okay. So what about, I wanted to ask you, I wrote this down to ask, as far as the location and logistics for your customers, as well as the folks that work for you, and then the parking situation that you have currently and what you would have at Sillect. So do you see it being any type of an inconvenience, or perhaps more convenient to be downtown for the members of the public that are coming to your location on 18th versus going to the Sillect Avenue location?
Supervisor Scrivener, through the chair, no, I don't. Because currently our customers park on the street because of the parking lot, the parking structure being full with other staff from other agencies around the building.
Mm-hmm.
So our customers park on the street. Those that take the bus walk all the way from Vest over. With the new location, the bus stops directly in front of our office, so that wouldn't be the same issue. When it's 105 degrees, or it's, it doesn't rain here very often, but if it's raining, that's a long walk from Vest to our office.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not the barrier for our customers. For our staff, the new location has a gated, secure parking area for them. So they would no longer be sharing parking with anyone. We've had vandalism, and we've had people's vehicles broken into because of the parking structure. And we have a security guard that walks the structure, but not all the time. And we've actually installed cameras also to try to reduce that, but there are blind spots, and there are issues with the parking structure for us.
Okay, and also at the Sillect Avenue location, you'll have off-street parking for the public as well?
Yes, just parking in the front for the public, and there's, I don't know how many parking spaces there are, but there are quite a few.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Chavez. Mr. Alsop, let's talk for a minute about the money side of this. Obviously, child support services, they don't have a general fund funding stream. The savings that Ms. Chavez will realize by either moving or staying at the current location, those are state and federal funds, and Ms. Chavez, you'll be using those funds to hire more staff, what you say, if that's your plan?
Yes.
Is that correct? Either way, whether you stay or go?
Correct.
Yeah. But Mr. Alsop, we have the consideration of the crime lab and its lease, and that is a general fund department. And so we do, each year when we're having a rough budget year, it's a struggle for us to not only fund everything, but the crime lab is always one that comes up in our discussions about our public safety budget. And so how do you analyze these? I know that you're recommending the move to Sillect now, but I know that you did take a long, hard look at staying and what that could save as far as the crime lab is concerned. But I want to talk to you about what's the plan if we move as far as the crime lab and how we are looking to realize some savings there in the future. Because that lease is coming up at the same time, is that correct? Is it also the end of the year?
Correct.
Okay.
I first want to point out the document that we received that has the numbers on it from Mr. Anderson and Mr. Bynum it's not correct. I don't know where it's not correct, but it's not correct. And I'll explain what we have as compared to what they have. The savings associated with a move to Sillect.
Do you want that on the overhead? Do you want the document on the overhead?
I don't know if it matters because I just don't know where to point to. Are you talking about my document?
Yeah, your document.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. It's a good idea. Okay.
Can it be bigger?
This is the savings proposed at with the move to Sillect. If you just go straight to the bottom, savings over 10 years, $13.6 million in savings to your operations director, Chavez. That's all non-general fund money, but nonetheless taxpayer money.
So it's $1,359,000 times 10 years. Is that how you got 13?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is the proposal at the current location. What's different about this proposal, it includes the crime lab, and the current property owners did include and extend a drop in rent to the crime lab in addition to, and when I said match, essentially if you look at the bottom down here, it essentially their deal matches what we would be saving by leaving. With a little, 13.9 as opposed to 13 point, I think I said 6. So it's pretty even there. What's different and what got my attention was that they had extended the deal to include the crime lab, which is 100% general fund, and they have real budget issues. Just as we all do in all general fund departments. That savings, and Mr. Anderson was correct in saying it was about $3 million in general fund savings over a 10-year period. Essentially, what we'd see is a reduction in annual general fund contributions toward the lease of that facility under what's being proposed by a total of $292,000 a year, which is substantial. The other item that was proposed by the current property owners was something that they would give this year, this calendar year, and they would offer to cut rent to the facility by about $60,000 a month for the remainder of the year, which would give us a one-time savings. I believe it's $720,000, but it could be a little bit less, but it's substantial one-time savings, and that goes to the crime lab. The crime lab would remain at this facility after Child Support Services leaves, which is why we would get to work on renegotiating terms, which I believe we could do, and I believe that the Anderson Lee Group would work with us just as they've worked very well with us on all of this. We've been in that facility on 18th Street for about 20 years. The county has spent approximately, according to our numbers, just shy of $60 million in lease payments for that facility on 18th Street in a 20-year span. It is, I want to be careful as the CAO about getting into long-term lease agreements going forward and make sure that if we do, there is some value added long-term benefit of doing that. So I would go into a new negotiation for the crime lab with that perspective. At the end of the day, after looking at the numbers, Supervisor Scrivener, I don't believe that the needs that are being laid out, I think pretty clearly. I mean, if you ask me when I see the plan that was proposed by I think it looks great. But I'm not the expert. I don't know the regulations. I don't know Director Chavez's operations, her needs. She's not the only director that was proposing this move. This move was being proposed by Director Mitchell before he left. In fact, he called me and said, hey, we're moving. So it's a couple of directors now. I don't believe the savings, which would at this point be one-time savings this calendar year, which would be incredible. It's tempting. I don't believe it mitigates in any way the needs of having a facility that she's able to operate in and meet her obligations to the federal government in terms of how she's spending her money and how she's securing her facility. So that was sort of the decision process in all of this. And I just would end by, not end, maybe we'll continue, but I do want to say that the relations between all of us here and Mr. Anderson and Mr. Bynum, Mr. Lee have been great. And they have really done a heck of a lot of work to try and meet our needs here, as evidenced by the numbers you're looking at. And in the space planning, which I saw, they offered to pay for it all. I mean, it's very, very generous of them, and they have worked very, very hard. But at the end of the day, you have a department director that is saying that it's not quite meeting the needs, her needs.
Thank you, Mr. Alsop. One last question, Mr. Chairman, if I may, that I neglected to ask Ms. Chavez. The 18th Street proposal, the reconfiguration of your space going from 3 floors to 2, et cetera. How is that remodeling going to work for you? How would it work for your staff if they're on site and they're working and this work is taking place? Have you, as far as the logistics of that and then any of the security issues, as far as the information you have to safeguard, it just occurred to me that may be an issue for you.
Well, it will be an issue because we can't have, we would have to be, someone from my staff would have to be present at all times for any construction work that's going on. Besides that, we would have to find a way to continue to operate while construction is going on and moving my staff around. I would assume it'd probably be more than once because as you're building out the areas, we would have to move people around to get the work from the, staff from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor and then the interviews from the 2nd floor to the 1st floor. So there's going to be a disruption. The Sillect plan offers me an opportunity because we are also this year receiving our tech refresh, which means we're going to receive new equipment from the state, new computers, printers, et cetera. And that's supposed to be scheduled for November. I was working with the state to try to delay it till December so that it would be delivered at the Sillect building, and I could incrementally move my staff over, move some workstations over, and just start business a little bit at a time over there.
Okay, so you'll be moving new computers, new
Right.
equipment that could be
Right.
brought over, installed, while still working at the current location.
Right, and it's
then-
less disruptive to my customers.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Chavez. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Supervisor Scrivener, Supervisor Gleason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things. First, I think it was Mr. Anderson said that he described this as a discussion we were having today, and I wanted to thank him, and I want to thank both parties for their vigorous competition in a respectful manner. I think what drives that attitude is a sincere desire on both parties to service Kern County to the best of their abilities, and that's what their goal is. And with partners like that, Kern County is going to succeed, and I'm very grateful for everybody in this room, their contribution to solving this problem. A couple questions I have that I'm not exactly clear on is, I think Mr. Hill might be able to help me out with that. I want you to take a minute and go through I guess we didn't use an RFP process, but we used some other solicitation process. I'd like for you to spend some time talking to me about how we went about that and how we got to where we are without an RFP. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gleason, through the chair. We typically, General Services Property Management, do not use RFPs as it relates to property lease projects or property lease efforts. We have a group of professional brokers and property managers that have contacts with most commercial, I won't say all because I don't know all of them, but most commercial property holders in Kern County. We use the networks that we use as a private, or as essentially a government property management group. We use our connections to reach out to property owners in areas that we know are important. We worked closely in this case with initially with Marcus Mitchell in determining the property locations. We reached out to 4 property owners as well as the existing property owners at 18th Street and began negotiations with them. So there's no RFP. We do use an RFP for, say, build-to-suits, those types of things, but in a lease situation we don't. There's no requirement that we do. There's no requirement that we don't. Our habit has been, and successfully so, has been our outreach within our property group as professionals with contact to the commercial group. I will add, your board considered 38 property leases and property lease amendments and agreements last year. In the past 12 years, we use this process all the time. They come to this board all the time, and to good effect and successfully. So I don't know if that answers your question about the process, but.
Close enough. At the end of the day, this whole project, we're going to come to a savings because we're adjusting leases. With either party we go to, we're going to come to significant savings for the taxpayers. So I'm wholeheartedly in support of Mr. Alsop's thought regarding long-term leases and how best to manage them. Maybe they're good sometimes, maybe they're not so good other times. I don't know how that works. But seeing the savings we're going to achieve with whatever decision we make today leads me to believe that we need to review all the leases we've got and make sure that we are providing the taxpayers with the most efficiency when we make those financial arrangements and put some type of review in place. Thank you. Ms. Chavez. I want you to comment, please. I applaud your efforts on Lean Six Sigma, by the way. I want you to know that, everybody knows that I'm a big Lean Six guy, and I'm hearing more and more about that, and I'm seeing it bleed over into all phases of our governance, and I'm sincerely appreciative of your efforts with that and the way you approach that in terms of using this, your decision here. So, if you're truly Lean Six Sigma oriented, which I believe you are, explain to me how your new building will be customer oriented.
Supervisor Gleason to the chair. We will have on our first floor our interview booths. So our customers will only come in and check in one time with the receptionist, who will then notify the case manager that there is someone there to see them, and they will directly go into the interview booths. Currently, right now, they go to check in 2 times and go to see someone. The other issue is we will have our resource center on the first floor, which is there for customers who are seeking employment. I just had a meeting with Teresa Hitchcock last week to discuss a partnership between her organization and ours to provide those services to their customers. So when a non-custodial parent comes in that's unemployed, we're going to help them to look for employment, to create their resume. There's different things we can do in that area. We also have on the first floor we'll have a multi-purpose room, which is the room that we use for our all-staff meetings. Our managers are required to have all-staff meetings with their staff, and we have those in that room. We also have our annual all-staff meeting, and it just makes it easier because we can meet there and take shifts. And we don't have to look for location. We don't have to have staff going off the premises, and it's less disruptive to our customers. And our legal team will also be on the first floor. Having them on the first floor will allow us the ability to negotiate for stipulations when our customers come in. If there is something that they need our attorneys to help them with, we'll be able to better serve them that way. So basically, our HR will be on the first floor. Right now, it's on the 3rd floor. So when someone comes in to interview for a position in our organization, they have to check in on the 1st floor. Someone has to escort them to the 3rd floor. After the interview, we have to escort them back out, check them out. With having them on the 1st floor, the security guard will just do that there and notify HR they're there, and they will be in the same area. Our business office will also be on the 1st floor, and they are the staff that directly deal with the vendors that come into our organization. As I previously mentioned, we cannot have vendors on the premises without them being escorted. So when a copy machine breaks down or telephone breaks down, they have to be escorted by a staff member, and they have to follow them everywhere they go. So right now, that same process happens. They check in, they come and get them, take them up to the 3rd floor. With having all of those essential customer service, vendor, and candidate services on the 1st floor, we'll be able to better serve our customers and really not spend so much time with our staff going around checking people in, taking them up and down the elevator, which is what happens right now.
Mr. Anderson talked about a 200-person training room on the, I think it was the 3rd deck, but it may have been the 2nd. Could you talk to, and I don't know, he's trying to help get you to where you want to be. Talk to me about that.
Sure. The proposed floor plan has the training room on the 3rd floor, which, as I previously explained, if someone comes into our building when we're having, let's say, an orientation for our case participants, because we offer orientations, and we're going to start to do that more often. When someone doesn't know how to do a modification of their case, we're going to offer classes for them. Right now, if someone comes in with this floor plan, we would have to check them in on the 1st floor, take them up to the 3rd floor, and have them in the room, and then when the session's done, take them back downstairs and check them out. Having it on the 1st floor, I wouldn't have to have that issue anymore, because we would just be able to check them in and send them straight to the multipurpose room, which is in that lobby area. So I don't know if you've seen a diagram of that building, but there's a lobby area, and it's basically serving every single one of those points of contact. When we have collaborative partners come into our organization, they will be on the 1st floor also. So we offer VITA tax, the tax services, so our customers can have their taxes done, or anyone that wants to access that service, they are on the 1st floor. So it just reduces my traffic and contains it all in one area.
Thank you. The way I'm looking at this, we have 2 really good options in front of us, and I'm going to support our department head, and I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second for the record. Our CAO, I believe, is asking to speak.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I did want to just follow up on Supervisor Gleason's comment about understanding our property-related needs, our lease situation in the county. And I wanted to let the board know that I'm going to be asking our Department of General Services to do a complete review of all of our lease space countywide, trying to understand, with an attempt to understand exactly how much money we're paying out in leases, what the terms of those leases are, when they're up, what the size of the space is, are these lease agreements competitive and so forth. And so I'm going to be undertaking that with General Services, and we'll report back to you.
Any follow-up? Supervisor Couch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow up on that, with an eye towards, well, let me just state if general fund departments ought to own their own facilities, in my opinion. If there are enterprise funds that are obviously precluded from doing that, that's different, but sort of like owning your own home. If you can get to the point where you don't have the mortgage anymore, it frees you up to do a lot of things. And I'm hopeful that we can get to and you never get there if you don't start. So I'm hopeful that we can get there for maybe future boards. And in the negotiation for the crime lab, I think that should be part of the mix. That's a general fund funded department, and I'll leave that to you all to talk with the property owners about that. But I think the potential of owning that building for the crime lab ought to be discussed with them, as well as what you mentioned earlier, which is the potential of a completely different location, co-locating the crime lab in the coroner's office, the coroner's operations. So this, I'll make a brief comment, and that this really sort of comes down to me in, do I think the $3 million we'll save, or based on the Lee Development's proposal that we might not get if we stayed there, will we eventually retain that if you all go off and do your job doing what I just sort of described? And I think that we eventually will. Although you said it pretty well, it's very, very tempting to say, hey, that's $700,000 this year we could save, and X amount of dollars going forward. That gave everyone pause, I think. But it sounds like it's the will of the board, and I want to support our department head as well. So I'm going to vote in favor of the motion, but it was a difficult few weeks to come to that conclusion, and I still do it hesitantly because I think Lee Development, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Bynum put forward a good faith effort, and I know you've had a couple of bumps and bruises along the way in comments that were made by no one in particular about not getting back to people in time, but I've never experienced that with you all, and I think that you will remain good partners with the county and good partners with all of us. And I know when you said, both of you, I think, mentioned that, I think you meant it. I don't think you were I don't think those were empty words. So, Mr. Chairman, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor Couch. Okay, I'll throw in my 2 cents here before we vote. It's clear that a majority of the board is interested in supporting the department head and moving. I'm not going to support that, but here's why. I want to express my admiration for both of the parties that are involved, that are competing for the county's business. It is unfortunately become recently much more the norm in our country that when people disagree, they do it in a very nasty way, and they denigrate and disparage one another and make all kinds of salacious allegations about them. Neither of you have done that. You have my admiration and respect for doing this in a proper and appropriate way. The county leases other properties from both of you, I believe, and will likely do so in the future. I'm quite confident that they will, and I am very confident that the taxpayers will be served well by both of these two teams going forward, from top to bottom in their organizations. I also support our department head. Ms. Chavez has walked into a difficult task right out of the box, but I want you to assure you that I have every confidence in you, and I support you, and I want you to be successful, and my lack of support for this, which I'll explain in just a moment, is no reflection on you. I think you're tops, and I'm looking forward to a long, long tenure. Don't move away somewhere and leave us. We want you to run the department, okay? So hang in there with us. Here's why I am compelled to vote against the recommendation. From the very outset, I made it crystal clear that my only concern, at least my overriding concern, was what will drop to the bottom line of the general fund of the county of Kern. Either we are or we are not in a financial bind that causes us to look at that seriously. I'm not disparaging my colleagues. I have the greatest admiration for them, and so this is not a reflection on them. But the center that I come back to, Mr. Alsop, is I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. If we did not move and stayed in our current location, the savings, the non-general fund cost is very similar, but the savings to our general fund, was it not about $292,000 a year? And then on top of that, about between $600,000 and $720,000 of one-time savings?
Mr. Chairman, yes, by agreeing to sign in to a 10-year lease at the current location, we would see a one-time savings to general fund, I believe, of about $650,000. I think that's I may be getting my math wrong, but substantial one-time funding. And then we're assured there is a 2% annual inflator. However, we might have worked that in, I believe, to get the number we have at $292,000 and some change every year savings for the next 10 years.
So it's just shy of $1 million savings to the general fund the first year and about $292,000 thereafter. So that's what is driving me. It has nothing to do with anybody else in the scenario. That I'm driven by those numbers, and that's why I'm going to vote the way I am. So, okay, we've heard a great deal. Sorry, Supervisor Scrivener would like to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with you. The consideration for me that kept weighing on me was the impact on the general fund. This is a really difficult decision. Great people on both sides, tremendously ethical, just tons of integrity, and all tremendous business leaders. Both proposals do save money, but the general fund issue, that was the thing that kept weighing on me as I started to navigate this. However, I can see that there are real operational benefits for our department head if we do move to Sillect, and I think that is extremely compelling. And Mr. Alsop, this is your recommendation that we proceed and move to Sillect, and I believe that's because you have confidence that you're going to be able to save us that money in regards to the crime lab. Is that the case?
Yeah, both. I hope short term and long term.
Okay,
Yep.
and I have confidence in you, and you know that that's important to all of us that we do so. And so I'm going to support your recommendation and support the department head's request to move to the new location. But I'll be counting on you to make sure we find those cost savings. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Scrivener. Any other comments before we vote? Okay, let's cast our votes. Oh, sorry. There.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 opposed. Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you to both sides for your diligence and the way with which you comport yourselves. We'll look forward to doing further business with you. That concludes, I believe, Madam Clerk, does it not, this afternoon's agenda? We are next on calendar to meet next Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Is that correct, Ms. Clerk? Okay. Are there any other comments before we close? Is there a motion for us to adjourn?
So moved.
Without objection, so ordered. Thank you.